Hello, everyone. I'm Tori Samples, Director of Product at the Stellar Development Foundation, and thank you for coming here today to talk about trust. In a space obsessed with trustlessness, have you thought about what it actually would mean to remove trust from the blueprint of life? Not only would it make our technical systems fall apart, but we would lose some of our humanity in the process. I'm here today to contend that trust isn't going anywhere. In fact, it's essential for everything worth building, in life and in Web3. We'll talk today about the equation of trust, which gives us context for why trust is the last thing we should seek to remove in any situation. The dimensions of trust, which frame the ever-present frames of trust day to day, and a personal model of trust to help you understand how you and others react organically in situations that require trust. Then we'll shift gears, dive into Web3 and why trust models should be explicitly stated, and how to build an ecosystem of trust for developers, institutions, and real-world users. Throughout everything, you'll see how trust is an essential part of our humanity, and how models of trust get built into our technology, whether we acknowledge it or not. Syzygy. Let's start with the role of trust in being human. As a society, we are enamored with eliminating the need for trust. But what if going trustless is a mistake? We talk about trustlessness as if it's a good thing, but that's not how real life works. I trust everything in my life to get through the day. And that's what makes us human. We're not omniscient. We don't have complete or perfect knowledge. We can minimize the need for trust, but it never goes away. Beyond that not being how life works, it's a search for complete control, which will always remain outside of our grasp. We all know a child who opts out of a game when they realize they're going to lose. That's what happens when we try to eliminate the need for trust. The need for trust, trusting, is part of the human experience. It's also a skill. Learning how to trust confidently is part of our evolution, our life experience. We'll talk more about that. Trust gets at the basic building blocks of culture, community, and society. When we tear away at the need for it, we tear away at the fabric of being human. Recognize that we are a society built on analytical trust. Most Western cultures are. That means that we want something to be verified, ideally by impersonal sources, in order to believe it. We're more likely to believe it if it's on the internet or in a peer-reviewed journal. So of course we run to technology to try to overcome the need for trust. It's a temptation that uniquely suits us. When we say that we seek to eliminate the need for trust, we're often actually trying to seek the absence of vulnerability. I want to show you that trust is the last thing we should seek to eliminate in situations of vulnerability. We can't make ourselves invincible, invulnerable, and so we need trust to cover that gap. Without it, we alienate ourselves, and we put our fate into the hands of others who may or may not have our best interest at heart. It's not a perfect model, but here's how I see the basic equation for trust in moments of vulnerability. Vulnerability plus trust equals beauty. Vulnerability minus trust equals danger plus luck. Let me demonstrate the difference between the two. I built a company in Africa. At the time, a startup that needed to stretch every penny, which landed me in all sorts of situations. Comical, dicey, wonderful, the whole spectrum. I was based in Rwanda, and I often took extended market research or partnership trips in surrounding countries with my co-founder. We learned over the years to trust each other with our lives. Not an exaggeration. We had to. Through that relationship, I also learned what it was like to trust someone with myself. I had never given someone access to the deepest, most insecure, vulnerable pieces of me that tend to come out when you're overspent, emotionally overwhelmed, exhausted, trying so damn hard to accomplish something that nobody else understands. To have those pieces of me accepted, seen, and seen as strengths reframed my view of myself. That is the power of trust. Now, giving access to yourself in that way comes with its own set of risks. In general, I wouldn't recommend it. But The power of that and the beauty of being so seen and held in that moment was undeniable. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, I've been in vulnerable situations without trust. What we colloquially frame as trust is often just throwing the dice and hoping that blind luck will turn in our favor. Twice, I've run away from people trusting that they wouldn't shoot me in the back. One was a soldier toying with me because he could. The other was a drunk, self-appointed guard holding court with his friends. They both had automatic weapons. I knew that I needed to get out. My best option was to flee. When I turned my back, I put my fate in the hands of another, not because I trusted them, but precisely because I didn't. When I look back on those situations, I feel a sense of relief more than confidence in my decision-making. It worked out, but it could have gone the other way. I wouldn't repeat it if given a choice. I was vulnerable without trust, and in that hotbed of danger, luck determined the outcome. The presence of trust to cover vulnerability is the difference between a good experience and a bad experience. Now, let's think about what this looks like closer to home. All good works require trust, especially if beauty is part of the desired outcome. Think of dance. One great dancer can emote on their own, but a duet, two people entrusting themselves to another, can be so much more powerful. Think of an artist and their subject, when the subject fully entrusts the artist, capturing their likeness, their spirit. The more the subject is willing to trust the artist, and vice versa, the more beautiful the work can be. The more people are doing something, the less one individual person has to trust, which is why trust is most on display in one-on-one or first follower situations. But it's true even at scale. Large-scale protests and movements evoke their own kind of beauty, because there is safety and power in a group that protects and holds each other. Let's dial into the dimensions of trust at play in any given situation. When we trust, it manifests through a few planes, visualized vertically, horizontally, and as an internal core. Trusting the environment is the easy one. We tend not to think about it too much because it can be consistent and dispassionate, but it's also one of the most complex. I trust gravity literally every second of the day. I trust the roof to not cave in on my head. I don't think about it, but the roof only holds because countless others have pushed for building codes and had their own interest in mind when designing, building, and being in the space. I'm relying on and benefiting from the work of others, even when I'm unaware of it. Trusting the environment is trusting natural order and societal progress. Think of it as vertical trust, from your feet on the floor to the roof over your head, trusting unseen factors that keep everything in between safe. Trusting others is the one that we spend a lot of heartache on. We've all probably had experiences that lead us to swear off individuals or groups. But the horizontal plane of trusting those in front of us, both individuals and institutions, is important. And hopefully we've all had equally wonderful experiences of a comforting hug, eye contact, jam sessions that leave us energized, feeling connected with others, hopeful and secure. This is horizontal trust. Then finally, we have trusting oneself. Trusting oneself is easy in some ways and hard in others. It's the central core that informs how I see the world. I trust myself, I think. I trust myself to walk into a room, not run into a couch most of the time. I trust myself to be a good conversation partner after years of practice. But when I look at my internal monologue, it's clear that I don't fully trust myself. I doubt, I nitpick, I second guess. I'm a musician, a harpist, and while I don't play as much now as I used to, I've always preferred to play on my own because it gives me more control. My fear in playing with others often isn't about the other people, but the fear of me messing up the piece for everybody else. Think about that. I am afraid to trust myself. Of all the humans in the world and all the unknowns that they represent, my default is often to trust myself the least. I have a feeling we all feel this way at times, probably because we have the most complete knowledge of ourselves. It is an informed opinion. The takeaway here is that as hard as we work to build trust with other people, we need to do that with and for ourselves. We are on a constant journey to prove that we are trustworthy beings, and we must start with the one person that we can't fool, ourselves. Now, it's tempting to think that technology falls outside this framework, that it removes the need for trusting along these planes. But I'd argue that trusting technology is really just a combination, a flavor of these three, not an escape from it. When we trust technology, we trust the environment delivering the technology to us, the people who created the technology, and ourselves to use it responsibly. Technology is a product of people and always makes a claim on us, whether we recognize it or not. It is typically more consistent, more predictable than humans, but it's unwise to think that it falls outside the ever-present dimensions of trust. Now let's think about this on a personal level, particularly in regard to new ideas and people. I have here a graph that shows this on a personal level, how you typically trust when faced with new situations. On the x-axis, there's your trust in people from 0 to 1, and your y-axis is trust in new ideas. Now, most people might assume that crypto people are down here, skeptics. However, I think that they're actually up here. You have to have extremely high openness and trust in new ideas in order to embrace a technology like blockchain, even if it claims to be trustless. Over here, we have the artist, who are generally embracing and trusting of new ideas and people, which leads to creativity and generation. Maybe that's why there's such a natural intersection between the worlds of Web3 and art. Not that it's important, but I tend to fall down here. I'm more trusting of people than I am of new ideas. I see this in how I talk to people at parties, how much of myself that I reveal to others, and how I respond when treated or given new ideas, which is generally with skepticism. This absolutely impacts how I interact with products and how I build them for others. So the most important thing here is to know where you fall on this chart. The second most important thing is to know where the other people that you're interacting with fall as well. So how do we build connection with people who have a different model of trust than we do? How do we bridge the trust gap when the foundation for what is inherently trustworthy differs? Once you understand where they fall on this chart, I think that it boils down to basic product design, which is really just basic relationship building. Meet people where they are. Use language that is familiar to them. Appeal to their interests and gradually, iteratively move them closer to where you want them to be. I recently had a heated conversation with a Bitcoin maxi in the wild. In fact, he was the owner of a coffee shop where I was on vacation for a few days. And it was the best rated coffee anywhere near me. I walked in, happened to be a crypto cafe. So I naturally said, "What crypto do you accept as payment?" And he looked at me and he said, "Look around, sweetheart. What do you think?" Everything was Bitcoin branded. We proceeded to have a lovely conversation in which he yelled at me with plenty of expletives about Stellar and about how Bitcoin is the only thing that no one can take from you. I finally just looked at him and I said, "What made you this way?" And he looked me in the eyes and he said, "I'm from Argentina." Everything clicked. Enough said. Those 3 words told me that he has been through some really hard stuff, that he has personally experienced the loss of trust in his environment and others from a government whose destabilizing policies influenced an entire nation, and he probably lost his own financial security as well. Now, the conversation to that point had told me that he is still privileged enough to leave his environment, and he has enough disposable income to smile and buy when Bitcoin tanks. But understanding him gave me new insight into him as a human being, his model of trust, and allowed me to approach the conversation in a new way. While it's an extreme example, it shows how understanding trust bridges gaps and builds empathy. So again, keep this model in mind for yourself and for others, especially if you're designing products for other people. Knowing their model of trust shows you where you have to work harder. It shows you where historical areas of pain can become areas of strength and beauty as people learn to trust what you've designed. Taking all of this into account, our goal then shouldn't be the elimination of trust, but rather the cultivation of trust, both for navigating new communities and building trusted networks over time. We need stability to teach us to breathe, to be at peace. And we need challenges to push us to grow. A toddler learns to walk by expanding their trust, first to the humans that hold their hands and hold them up, and then to themselves as they learn to confidently stand on their own 2 feet. Isn't that funny? We rely on others to teach us things before we can do the internal work of trusting ourselves. It's backwards from what we probably want. It grates against our individualist culture and the misguided tendency to think that we can learn things on our own. But that's often how it works. We learn many things first through others and then by building confidence in ourselves. This is true for us even on a micro and macro level, including being here this weekend. Entering into any new community is scary. It requires trusting oneself to navigate the norms of the community and trusting others to do the same. In putting yourself out there this weekend, you are flexing your trust muscles. You are skill building. When we let this lapse and we don't practice, when we seek comfort over learning, we see societies fall apart. You are the counterculture this weekend. You are standing your ground and flexing your humanity through trial and error, vulnerability, and trust. And there is so much beauty in that process. So what does all this mean for Web3? How can we cultivate trust? First, drop the obsession with trustlessness. It's a false narrative. Yes, the technology changes the trust model, but in order to participate in a network, I still have to trust lots of variables, some of which are behind me. You will never completely eliminate the need for trust. Instead, move towards cultivated, confident trust. Cultivated because it's based on actual thought, actual intention, and confident because it's based on a history of learnings, proof, results. Build up your trusted networks. Reflect when they don't work out. Gut check yourself if and when you see yourself viewing technology as a substitute for trust. Develop an everyday practice of trust as you build and use products that explicitly names the trust model and the dimensions of trust required. Pulling back the curtain will teach you things just on its own. Answer the question for yourself and users. What do I trust? Where do I find peace? Most of us in Web3 build products that touch money or value in some way. If you think about all of the things that you can trust someone with, your body, your opportunity, your mind, your heart, trusting someone with your money actually falls pretty low on the list, but it feels big. We must address the need for trust and give our users that same cultivated, confident feeling of trust in our products that we seek for ourselves. I want to share what this looks like at the Stellar Development Foundation and how we live this out day to day, starting with the Stellar blockchain itself and moving into an ecosystem with real-world examples that makes trust possible on a larger scale. Trust starts with access, lives on utility, and dies with unreliability. That's where Stellar has built a claim over the last 11 years. Let's look at how the blockchain itself and the ecosystem around it are optimized for trust. The Stellar network has built-in trust by design. The protocol itself is trustable, and participants succeed by earning trust. With any blockchain, some group, someone, is calling the shots. We can pretend like they're not, but that's just not true. At Stellar, we make it explicit. Validators are known and earn influence based on their behavior and reputation. Stellar's proof of agreement consensus protocol is fundamentally different than proof of work or proof of stake. It's not based on computational power or token ownership. It's built around social trust and mutual agreement. The Stellar network is built up of small groups of nodes that mutually trust each other. These groups overlap enough to form a connected, public, and permissionless network. The result is that validators have control over their trust, over who they trust, but they still benefit from that global network. Since there are many groups of trust, the blockchain remains open with no single authority or group controlling who can be added to the network. Now, anyone can run a validator, but influence is not granted by wealth or compute power. It is earned through mutual trust. On Stellar, random entities that could be malicious can't just join because they staked a large sum of tokens, as seen on proof-of-stake blockchains. This prevents a range of attacks, including the recent $25 million MEV boost attack seen on Ethereum. In proof-of-stake blockchains, there's one group that everyone must trust everyone, based on how much stake they have. That is like being forced to trust individual billionaires with my life over my friends and family, my community, just because they have the most money. Now, maybe they do know what they're doing, maybe they are trustworthy, but they might not have my best interest in mind. The point is that I should get a say in who I trust with decisions that impact my life. Let's also talk about the difference between participating to profit versus participating as a user with real skin in the game. Think of it like a real estate developer coming in to extract as much value as possible from the land versus somebody who's designing their dream home, who's going to live in that house forever. It's a totally different process with different incentives and different outcomes. With most blockchains, validators are run by mining organizations, infrastructure companies, organizations that are interested in profiting off crypto markets. The majority of them are not active users of the network themselves. Those are the real estate developers. These validators have the power to upgrade or change the network and are incentivized to keep the network as profitable as possible, not as effective or efficient as possible. This results in networks trending towards features that extract value from transactions, as opposed to making transactions cheaper or more powerful for everyone. Think of Bitcoin being notoriously slow and expensive. And mining pools have no incentive to increase block size to make it more effective for everyone. Even modern blockchains like Solana have proposed giving more money to validators despite concerns around fairness. Now, because proof of agreement is not economically based, validators on the Stellar network are operated almost entirely by builders operating on the network. They don't get paid for validating transactions. So running a validator isn't profitable on its own, but it's a way for users of the network to secure the network that their companies and their transactions rely upon. They are going to be living in this house. The result is that Stellar has the lowest fees of any blockchain and no front-running or MEV networks. This is what this actually looks like in practice, with each dot representing a validator on the Stellar network and overlapping circles of trust based on earned influence. This is an almost live view yesterday into how the Stellar consensus protocol looks in real life. This model of trust has been running seamlessly for 11 years. We've seen that it's efficient, effective, and mirrors the best of true-to-life trust models. In 11 years, the Stellar network has experienced 67 minutes of downtime in one single incident. Over 11 years. That is reliability in action, which gives builders and users the confidence they need to trust the network in many different capacities. Beyond the Stellar network itself, there's a whole ecosystem that makes Stellar-based products trustworthy for normal people living around the world. Let's start with access. Stellar has the largest cash off-ramp in the world through the MoneyGram network. In practice, this means that I can take my USDC almost anywhere in the world to 170 countries and cash it out into local currency at over 480,000 cash pickup locations. I can send crypto to almost anyone in the world that they can use in real life. 1.4 billion people globally still rely on cash and are often excluded from digital financial tools like blockchain and crypto. With Stellar wallets and MoneyGram ramps, even users without a bank account can access the digital economy by depositing and withdrawing through MoneyGram locations, wherever they are. This is how we bridge the physical and digital divide, by emphasizing accessibility. After access comes utility, which in our world means wallets. The Stellar ecosystem has lots of different wallets that are tailor-made for specific groups, interests, geographies. Whether it's an easy interest into global capital markets and yield pools, or a dollarized digital savings account, the Stellar ecosystem's got you covered. This is something I know well, because before joining SDF, I built a Stellar wallet in East Africa, first for refugees and migrants, and then for the general population. We were the first in the world to build a blockchain-based wallet for non-smartphones. And with this, people could stop carrying cash over borders for the first time in their lives, pay for things locally with mobile money, and send money to their loved ones in other countries without being price gouged or having to entrust their money to a random bus driver. I have personally experienced, from living in these places and talking to thousands of users over the years, how impactful a digital wallet can be. Financial health is overall wellness. And the less time somebody has to stress over their payments and their financial transactions, the more time they have to invest in their real life, their health, their wellness, their family, education. Another crucial building block of a trusted ecosystem is high-quality assets. Stellar is optimized for asset issuance and has been since inception. Anyone can easily issue assets on Stellar, including you and me, but the design of the network helps identify which assets are trustworthy. That's why organizations like Circle and PayPal issue stablecoins on Stellar, and why many of the world's global reserve currencies are represented on the network. We've had stablecoins on Stellar since long before the term was invented. And that's still where we see a lot of interest, both from individual consumers and from institutions coming on chain. Stellar gives people access to stable assets no matter where you are or no matter who you are or where you were born. This applies equally to people with high access to financial tools, which brings us into the world beyond payments and stable assets. Now, Stellar is relatively new in the DeFi world. We just launched our smart contracts platform last year, but we've already seen exponential growth and the floodgates of innovation opened to our ecosystem. I like to say that the Stellar ecosystem is where you can find competitive DeFi rates without the nonsense. You get all the benefits of a trusted network with the creativity and flexibility of DeFi. We have the primitives in place and are now starting to see a flywheel of DeFi innovation across derivatives, asset management, lending, and trading. The Beans wallet is a great example of this. As one of the older Stellar-based wallets, it's been offering payments and stable assets for years. But in integrating the Blend protocol this year, it now offers great rates for USDC and EURC that are typically much higher than what banks can do. This app is built for everyday people. It abstracts all the complexity of crypto. You can load it with basically any payment in the world, including physical cash deposited in MoneyGram locations. You don't need to learn how exchanges work in order to access DeFi yield. The app is built to feel familiar, which bridges that trust gap that is crucial when trying out new financial products. The last building block of what makes the Stellar ecosystem trustworthy is the Stellar Development Foundation. Just because a technology is known as being trustless doesn't mean the process has to be. As a nonprofit that exists to grow the Stellar ecosystem, we're here to help. We fill product gaps by developing open source software that's available for free. It's permissionless that anyone can use. We advise developers and organizations on how to efficiently and effectively access the network and connect you with others who might be able to help as well. We don't control the network, but are here as a helping hand. In the real world, living up stable summer. We're not faceless, and we bring together all the different perspectives that are needed to make our ecosystem the place to be. We pride ourselves on this unique combination of access, utility, and trust. So in our last couple of minutes, let me tell you a few more stories about Stellar in the real world. If you were here last year, you probably saw that we debuted a film at Fest called The On-Chain Effect about our amazing partner Decaf and the work that they do in rural Colombia. You remember the story of Zach, an entrepreneur who was literally shot while carrying cash to pay his employees. Now, after moving his transactions onto Decaf and Stellar, he no longer needs to travel with cash, and the women that he employs have created a virtuous cycle of financial inclusion that has impacted their whole town. Great, that was last year. Let me tell you about some equally amazing things that have happened just in the last 12 months. GIZ, the development arm of the German government, has started to use Stellar Rails to pay people in notoriously difficult countries. It's moved an entire hospital system's payroll on chain, almost 1,000 people. Now, these people historically waited 3 to 4 months to get paid, and they could often end up paying high fees just to access their salary. Now, they get paid at the end of the month, and GIZ has saved enough money to build an entirely new hospital just by bringing their transactions on chain. Using the Stellar disbursement platform and a local wallet, they have revolutionized how people get paid. Etherfuse issues stable bonds on Stellar, basically tokenizing sovereign debt and making it available to everyday people, starting in Mexico. Investing at the risk-free rate is one of the safest investments that anyone in the world can make, but it's often been gated so that normal people can't access it. Etherfuse improves the lives of everyday people by eliminating those barriers and making bond yield accessible to all. Hoop Sagrado is a US nonprofit that takes at-risk kids from DC to Guatemala for the summer to run basketball camps. The founder has been called Narco Santa because of his big white beard, and also because of his propensity to carry giant bundles of cash when he travels to pay people locally. This summer, he moved on chain, and now he's using the Stellar disbursement platform and the Beans wallet, and is paying people in USDC that they can cash out locally at MoneyGram locations. Now, furthermore, those people, and you and me, can access Beans' high yield through the Blend protocol as an alternative to a bank account in order to save and earn. These solutions are available for daily use in the US too. From Franklin Templeton bringing their money market fund on chain with Benji, to PayPal's stablecoin PYUSD being issued on Stellar. which both consumers and merchants can tap into for things like accessing PayFi liquidity pools for working capital and participating in DeFi protocols and earning yield. This is what an ecosystem of trust looks like on a trustable protocol. This is why Stellar's model resonates. Access, utility, and trust aren't just buzzwords. They're lived reality for millions of people already on chain. In technology and life, trust can't be eliminated, and it shouldn't be outsourced. It's earned, person by person, product by product. I hope you'll see this for yourself, both by trying out Stellar-based products and by flexing your trust muscles this weekend at FEST. We're all humans, after all, and one of the most lasting things that we can do is build networks worthy of trust. Thank you. Also, if you're interested in continuing this conversation, come to the Stellar Trust Circle. We've got Anka Liu talking about localized trust just after this, and a whole host of programming, including yoga tomorrow morning, that's gonna be really great. So find us there. Thanks.